You're listening to Talking Law, the podcast where business owners just like you discover how to avoid legal landmines and build value using smart legal tips.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here and welcome back to Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, joining me on today's episode is Natasha Hawker, the director of the recruitment and HR advisory company Employee Matters. Natasha is a senior HR practitioner, as well as a speaker, author and trainer, which is quite a mouthful. And we're super excited to hear her insights on how to get the best return on investment on your management spend, thereby reducing employee disputes. One of the many areas that we specialise in here at Aspect Legal is employment law. And like all other areas of our practice, we believe in taking a proactive approach. That is, we strive to help our clients make the necessary changes to their business in order to avoid and prevent disputes before they arise. So in this episode, we drill into how you can potentially minimise employee disputes within your organisation by investing in your training and development for your managers. So don't go anywhere. Let's get started. Hi, Natasha. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming along to chat to us.
My pleasure. I'm really excited to finally be here, Joanna.
We've had a few goes at this, but let's not get into the very gory details
of why I haven't been here before now. Yes.
No, I know. All right. So let's launch into it. I think this topic will be extremely relevant to our listeners because many of our listeners are managers or advisors to managers of businesses, whether it's the business owners themselves or the management layer within a business. So let's talk first. I just want to talk first about why this topic matters. So why are we talking about the concept of management and the failure of management in the first place? What's the issue that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it really matters, Joanna, because I believe your employees are your greatest asset. They're also potentially your greatest liability in a business. And
isn't that the truth?
Isn't it just? And what we do know, when you talk to business owners and managers are exactly the same. The two things that keep both business owners and managers up at night are their employees.
Yeah.
And so it's a really important thing. And what we also know is that employers that actually find the secret sauce and they're able to build, create and maintain high performance and highly engaged teams outperform their competition every time. So, and we know that your employees, and especially if we talk about law, your employees are often your most expensive or second most expensive line item in the business. So often I don't think we give them the time and attention that we need to enable them to do their job as a business owner. And I feel like most managers are never actually given the skills. They're never taught how to be effective managers, let alone great managers. And so I believe that all businesses need their employees working to 100% productivity as much of the time as possible. And your managers are key to you achieving that. And if your managers aren't managing particularly well, you're never going to get there.
That's absolutely true. And I guess, just to throw in from a legal perspective, of course, we see many legal issues that relate to the area of employment law. But in many of these areas, I feel that the way staff have been managed can contribute. Now, I'm not saying that it's the fault of the managers, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of elements of management that can impact the way whether issues occur, number one. And number two, I think every manager, no matter how good they are, will still see issues occurring from time to time. But the way you manage or have managed through over a long period of time then contributes to how those issues will be dealt with and how likely it is that you'll end up in legal strife, I think. Let's just call it for what it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's a very good summary.
So we're talking about prevention here, I guess, which might be a funny thing for a lawyer to say, but we really would prefer to see our clients be able to prevent issues. And of course, we're there when issues are there from a legal perspective and need to be dealt with. But I think it's also good to give other components of how we can maybe help to prevent these issues from occurring in the first place. So let's then kick off into what the biggest issue you see from a management perspective.
Great question. I think the biggest issue I see is that managers have quite simply not been trained or mentored for the role that they're actually promoted into or are performing. And they're often promoted into that position without the required experience, skills, or training. And they've often learnt by observing a manager around them or different managers around them. And often these managers have bad habits. So those bad habits are just replicated and then they just grow and develop within the business. And I think the other issue here is that employers don't invest in training. And an example being, and I met this person literally just this last week, I met a senior manager the other day and he had 50 people under him. And he'd worked for the same boss for 25 years, Joanna, and he'd grown into the role, but he'd never had any formal management or leadership training. Now, he seems to be doing what I would suggest is quite a reasonable job, but what if he had that investment either through himself going off to university or going off and doing a course at AIM or whatever, and he'd had some great leadership training? What would that have done for his own performance and confidence as a leader? What would it have done for the level under him as he grows and develops them and mentors them? And what might it have achieved for the employees and the productivity of the business? And I think the answer would have achieved a lot.
It's really good points you're making here, because in the corporate sphere, there is, generally speaking, always a management program that's operated for people as they move up the ladder into a component of managing people. And there's the management and then the leadership training as that progression continues. So I think you're absolutely right. In SMEs, I think the issue is that quite often, and it can be a time and a costs issue, but I'm sure you'll talk to us about why there really is a very good return on training spend. Of course, it has to be the right training, right? But a very good return on training spend, even for SMEs. But it's not just the managers, in inverted commas, it's also the business owners and the owner layer as well, that quite often, is obviously sitting there even before you implement a management layer. But even once a management layer has been implemented, you still have the founders, the owners of the business needing to manage the managers. So quite often they're the ones who have also not had training.
You're absolutely right. And I think it's a real sadness for me that we've stopped as, I believe, a nation. I grew up in corporate world. I was lucky enough to spend 12 years at what I believe is one of the top, management consulting firms. And the training that I got there was first class. And you're right, it went a whole way through. But what I've done, and probably as a result of that, and it's only clicking in my brain now, when I started my own business, I realized there was a lot I didn't know. And I reckon we've probably spent over $150,000 easily on my professional development since I started my business. And that is absolutely proving itself in terms of dividends and results of the business. And I don't believe anyone is ever fully trained. I believe that we've always got to invest in our training. And I love that quote, and I love Richard Branson. And he says, train people well enough so that they can leave, but treat them well enough so that they don't want to.
Wow, that's awesome.
I think it's a really important message for business owners. And I think generally companies just aren't investing enough in their employees' development. And I think as a country, Australia has basically forgotten the importance of ongoing training, development, and what they need to do in that space. And I think as a result, we have some productivity issues in Australia. We really do. We're dropping down the OECD scale in terms of how productive we are as a nation. And I would even test your listeners to say, can you tell me what your productivity cost per employee is, or result per employee? And I would suggest that most of them couldn't even tell me how to work it out.
It's interesting. I was just actually at a conference yesterday talking all about the labour efficiency ratio for organisations, which for all the accountants out there who like numbers,
Yes.
you're probably all over it. But for the mere mortal business owner that's not an accountant, these are areas that aren't spoken about perhaps widely enough, I think. And productivity, of course, as you say, is a pivotal part of running a business. Okay, so let's just recap. The issues with management, I guess, are poor training or lack of training. So basing your own management style on those of just your anecdotal experience, which, might be good or might be bad, but probably isn't best practice, in any event. And then the issues that this can cause is low productivity or not optimizing productivity. And as I've said, legal issues. What else, Natasha? What else do you see is the issues that are caused?
Yeah, I think the other way that we see management failing is around they don't know how, when, and what to communicate to their team. And that leads to miscommunication, errors, and sometimes just general resentment. And I think effective communication is really important in a business, but it sort of happens just it just sort of forms and just sort of comes out, but there's no real planning around it. And I think business owners really need to build out a communication plan that's going to work best for their business. And, and it depends on the team dynamic. So, for example, in our business, as you know, Joanna, we have a dispersed workforce across Australia and New Zealand. So we use a tool called Voxer, and Voxer is a free app, and it's like a walkie-talkie. And because our team are all over the place, they're at offices or client sites or whatever, I just press the button and a communication goes out to my entire team. They can listen to that when they're driving, when they're commuting, when they're in their client with some headphones on, but it keeps them feeling connected. And we do that once a week as an example, and we talk about what are the wins, what's in the pipeline. We do a shout out to the team member. We just share, and they feel bought in, and they, even though they're all over the place, they feel connected to what's happening in the business. And I think that's really, really important.
I love it. We actually use Voxer. I'm a big lover of Voxer. And in fact, we also do. We don't do it through Voxer, but we do what you're talking about. We call it in our organisation here our daily huddle. But
yes.
We do a bit of a huddle here, and it's actually the history of that is quite interesting because I'd heard about the huddle for years and years and years, but I just sort of thought, look, that belongs in touchy-feely businesses, maybe even tech businesses. Cooler businesses than legal practices, perhaps. But one day, a very experienced business person said to me, "You know what? They do it in their business." I thought, hell, if he can do it, well, we can do it too. And but it's really transformed our business because of the communication flow.
Yeah.
Within our organisation. So big thumbs up from us. I completely agree with you, Natasha, on both the Voxer and the communication flow. Maybe can you give us an example of what you have seen in terms of issues caused within a business because of a communication flow that isn't helping?
Yeah, the most common one is that the rumour mill starts. And if you don't control the communication, the communication will get controlled for you. And it's generally not the most positive, and it's generally not the most accurate communication.
So have you seen examples of that?
Yeah, definitely. We have a client where when we first went in, they didn't communicate frequently. They didn't have a structure, and there was a lot of smoko breaks outside, an organisation that still does a lot of that. And the information that was shared in that smoko break wasn't positive, and it wasn't in line with where the business was going. And so what we had to do was to pull that in and actually get a communication strategy for how, when, and what do you want to communicate to your people. And I think it's a really important thing. And I can give you a personal example. At Employee Matters, we've always been incredibly transparent with our team, and we went through this a couple of years ago, and I have shared this publicly before, but we were going through a really hard time at the beginning of our business, and we realised we needed to make some changes, and that was going to have a negative impact for some of the terms and conditions for our employees. And we pulled everyone together and we just laid it out on the table. And we said what we needed to do. Now, interestingly, because we'd built up so much goodwill and so much transparency, that the team took the message, even though for them it wasn't necessarily great news, really, really well, because we had developed that transparency. They knew we were authentic. They knew it was coming from a good place. We shared all the figures with them. And it was a case of, well, maybe we don't like it, but we understand why you're doing it and we trust you and we know why it's happening. And so it meant that process, as difficult as it was significantly easier than had we come from a place of distrust with our employees.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, let's maybe drill then into some practical application here. How can people be better managers? Obviously, get trained.
Yeah, I think number one is get trained.
Yeah, but what are the tips? What are some actual practical things over and above training that managers should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think the easiest way for an individual is, and this doesn't cost anything, which is even better, or you can pay for them, but you don't have to, is to identify or mentor a mentor and ask them to mentor you. Someone that's got experience, that may have experienced some or all of the things that you want to experience or you're going to experience or that you want to learn about. And ideally, that might be someone from your industry, but it doesn't have to be. In my personal experience, I've had the same mentor since I was 18. And we regularly catch up, and she, it's interesting because the relationship's evolved over time. It was very much me in awe of her at the beginning, and I learnt, and it was very much a one-way flow of information and wisdom and knowledge. But now our relationship has evolved much more, and she's become a client and a friend, and we coach and develop each other, so we'll bounce ideas off each other of different experiences. So I think obviously we talked about education, but getting specifically around management education, it would be how to listen effectively. We think that's such a simple skill, but listening is a really tough skill, and using effective or listening or tactical empathy can be really powerful things. It might be interview skills, or it might be coaching skills. I'm a big fan of a coaching model called TGROW, Topic, Goal, Reality, Options, Way Forward. And that is a great way to mentor and grow and develop your team under you. So you're not doing it to them, they're doing it and growing like a coach in a sports team. And I think that's really important. So yeah, they would be my top tips of getting some skills and identifying, being really honest with yourself when we're not all superstars at everything. I know my attention to detail is not my strength. So that would be an area I need to develop. And so think about yourself and work out what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then try and lift your skills in that area, or focus on what you're good at. Do jobs that enable you to do the things you're great at.
And I guess I'd add into that, something that we've recently done is profiling across each of our team members, and I found that an amazingly useful. And we use DISC. There's many, and I think actually, Natasha, you talked to me about another profiling tool you use. So how about we talk about that in a moment? But I'd actually used DISC, so I felt comfortable with it. I've used it for years and years and years, but I hadn't used it in this business. But I thought, you know what, why not? Let's profile everyone. And going through the results was so, intriguing. I mean, our business is only 8 or 9 years old, but our longest serving employee has been here for around about that period of time. But even still, I'm still learning things about people, and certainly the newer employees I learned a lot about, and a lot of depth. And one of the things with this particular profile that we just used is not only is a personality profiling, but it also then gave a value and motivation profiling result as well. And that it can be really useful from a management perspective to understand what the drivers are, but also why conflicts occur, because conflicts, no matter what you do, will arise from time to time in a workplace because you're dealing with people. And I think the benefit of profiling is that people can recognise that you all come from slightly different perspectives, and certainly sometimes there's similarities, and so people can see why maybe sometimes they have the same perspective as someone else. It's because they have the same similarity in how they view the world, whereas other people coming at things from a different perspective, it can really just help to bear in mind that they're coming at that perspective differently. And it's not necessarily that, there has to be aggression in the workplace. It's just that people are viewing things differently. So I think from a personal perspective, that has been really useful in our business. What do you use, Natasha?
We use one called Harrison's assessment. What I like about Harrison, I'm very familiar with DISC and Myers-Briggs, is Harrison actually maps them to a job. So from a recruitment perspective, for anyone who's recruiting, it says, is Natasha a fit to be a HR manager? And it'll say, yes, she's a 79% fit. And better still, here are all of her traits that are mandatory to be a great HR manager, that are desirable and that are not necessary. So, when you get somebody into your business and it takes you 6 months to work out what they're good at and what they're not good at, this gives you that information up front. And what we know is we used to do it as an add-on to our recruitment support. Now we actually do it for the top candidate. And what it's done is lift the effectiveness of the hiring decision of our people, and they're much more confident about their hiring decision. And it's also increased the tenure of those people that are in those jobs because they're being hired. The 2 times the person said, I love the candidate, I don't care that Harrison says they're dreadful, they're both going to work out. It's purely anecdotal, but that is the only evidence that we have at the moment. But it's really interesting to see how successful that's been.
That's incredible. How long have you been using
We've been using it now about 4.5, 5 years.
Oh, well, you must have. If you're still using it, it must have been working pretty well for you and your clients then.
But it works also for that working out how people work together as well. They have other tools that do that as well.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, we've covered a lot today, Natasha. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I think we will be talking again in another podcast soon about ways that organisations can accelerate employee engagement, and indeed why you'd want to. I guess it's fairly obvious why you want to accelerate employee engagement. I'll certainly be looking forward to talking to you in that episode. And if you're interested in contacting Natasha, how do we go about doing that?
Great. If anyone wants to contact me, you can contact me at employeematters.com.au. And we have a whole lot of free tools and checklists and also downloads there that would be great for some of your managers that want to manage better.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. As I said at the beginning, I think it's extremely important for us to help our clients in finding ways, and our listeners to find ways to avoid issues from occurring in the first place. So that's what today's discussion has all been about. Thank you, Natasha. We look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that's it for today's episode with Natasha Hawker of Employee Matters. As a quick recap, today we talked about the sad reality that most managers aren't really trained or mentored to perform such a crucial role in a business. Natasha stressed the importance of really investing in the development and training of anyone in a management role and for your employees in general, if you wish to see massive and lasting improvements in their productivity and engagement and ultimately put you in the position to outperform your competition. But spending on management development doesn't only help increase profits and productivity, it also helps ward off employee disputes and other potential legal issues. So I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please subscribe to Talking Law on iTunes or your favourite podcast player to get notifications straight to your phone whenever a new episode is out. We'd also like to hear your feedback. So if you would, we would love you to please leave us a review and rating if you're already one of our subscribers, or even if you're just listening to this for the first time. Well, that's it. Thanks again for listening in. This has been Joanna Oakey and Talking Law, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers. While you are there, you might also like to check out our innovative product, Legal on Tap. Our SME version of this product provides a business with access to a team of lawyers to answer questions as they come up in the business. And our large business version also provides this access to our team of lawyers to ask questions, but it also provides a wide range of online-based training in contract law for non-lawyers. Both of these products are available for a ridiculously low monthly price. If you're interested, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au and check out our legal on tap pages, or head over to our contact page and submit a form to let us know that you would like more information.
Thanks for listening to Talking Law. Tune in next time for more smart legal tips and tricks to keep you clear of those legal landmines. If you want to get a download of today's show notes, head over to talkinglaw.com.au.
Are you looking for a top quality legal team to assist you in your organisation? Aspect Legal is an innovative commercial legal practice that specialises in providing fast and professional services for their clients. If you'd like to chat about how we might be able to assist you, simply head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au to book in a time for a free discussion with one of our lawyers.